Now that we've wrapped up with the section on applying for an export license, we're going to transition into the section on BIS and the Export Control Reform Initiative. We said we would come back to this subject in greater detail, and here we are in section 27. In our title, you can see we're going back to talk about 600 series and 9X515 items. Mentioned previously, and actually on a number of occasions, one of the goals of the ECR, the Export Control Reform Initiative, is to transition certain less sensitive items from ITAR control to the EAR. This has come up a number of times in this module. We're going to bring some real-world examples to the table. In our second bullet point, a number of articles transferring from the USML to the EAR's Commerce Control List are identified as 600 series. For those 600 series items, the ECCNs are in what's called the NA6NN format. Alphanumeric format, as we've seen all along, we are really interested in that 6 in the middle there. And as our sub-bullet point notes, 600 series constitutes less sensitive articles formerly under ITAR that are moved to the CCL. Items moving from category 15 of the USML, deals with satellites, are known as 9X515 items. So there's a difference between the two. 600 series and 9X515, two different things within the same topic. Articles and items moving from the USML to the CCL. Let's bring forth an industry vertical that helps to illustrate this point, specifically using an example of 600 series. Until recently, a manufacturer of parts for specially designed aircraft tire assemblies knew that these articles were classified under Category 8 of the USML, the U.S. Munitions List. The manufacturer also knows that many articles previously found on the USML have been moved to the Commerce Control List, but she's not sure where to find the proper ECCN. How can we help her? Based on our understanding of how the EAR is structured, we know that Category 9 covers aerospace and propulsion. This takes us back to our discussion on categories. We saw a bunch of examples on that, but Category 9 covers aerospace and propulsion. We also know that Product Group A deals with end items, equipment, accessories, attachments, parts, components, and subsystems. As such, because we're dealing with aircraft tire assemblies, we can begin our search for the proper ECCN based on the 9A classification. Of course we can. It's within aerospace and propulsion as a category, and A as a group, equipment, assemblies, and components. So we're in the right neighborhood here. Further analysis of the CCL reveals that entry 9A610 covers military aircraft and related commodities. There's that 6. That's what we were looking for, as we mentioned in the previous slide. A deep dive of 9A610 leads us to 9A610.Y.1, which specifically references parts for aircraft tires. We're getting much more focused in now. So given this sequence, we can say that parts for specially designed aircraft tires now fall under 9A610.Y.1 and are subject to the specific controls put in place by BIS. So moving from the USML to the CCL, but where becomes the question. That's what we've been solving here. Let's take a closer look. This is the excerpt from the CCL for 9A610.Y.1. Looking on the left-hand side, here's our citation. Here's our ECCN entry, 9A610. Military aircraft and related commodities other than those enumerated in 9A991.A. As we've seen in our several previous examples, we have some license requirements, starting with reason for control, national security, regional stability, missile technology, anti-terrorism, and any UN sanctions. So as far as the controls go, let's take one more look at how classifications work and license requirements work. National security applies to entire entry except a couple of citations there. RS applies to entire entry except 9A610.Y, all the way down to UN applies to entire entry except 9A610 Y. So we have a few mentions there, but so far so good. Let's have a look at what that Y extension denotes. Right-hand side. It's talking about specific parts, components, accessories, and attachments specially designed for commodity subject control in this ECCN or a defense article in USML Category 8. We made reference to Category 8 just a moment ago, and not elsewhere specified on the USML or in the CCL. And other aircraft commodities specially designed for military use as follows, and parts, components, accessories, and attachments specially designed therefore. Well, there's Y.1, aircraft tires. Assemblies for specially designed aircraft tires. This is a good classification and a good example of how an article moves from the USML and becomes an item on the CCL. So a nice example there. Let's move on and talk about 9X515 items. 9X515 signifies items that were under the satellite section of Category 15 in the USML. We'll make reference to that Category 15 in the next slide. Category 15 items that were transferred to the CCL include commercial communication satellites, ground control systems, and training simulators. Continuing on, some other Category 15 items that have been transferred to the CCL. Test, inspection, and production equipment, that might come back up soon. Non-critical software, non-critical technology, and parts and components related to the above. Some of the product groups found within 9X515, and this is pretty important, are 9A515, parts and components related to above, 9B515, test, inspection, and production equipment. We might see that in a moment. 9D515, non-critical software, and 9E515, non-critical technology. This is a nice place to stop for a second and reiterate this whole idea of the groups, the letters that we've talked about so much now. So if we went back to our original slide, or one of our original slides, where we discussed 3A001, that slide put forth by EAR, we could see that A, equipment assemblies and components, we just saw that in our previous example. B, test, inspection, and production equipment, so that 9B515, by definition, would have to be test, inspection, and production equipment. D is software, 9D515, non-critical software. And E is technology, 9E515, in this instance, non-critical technology. So just a tie-in with some of the previous subjects that we've discussed. Let's run out an industry vertical, providing an example to illustrate 9X515 items. A company in Torrance, California, produces test equipment that is designed for use on communication satellites that have historically been classified under USML Category 15A. Let's point out right away that we're talking about test equipment. So as far as groups go, we should be looking in Group B, test, inspection, and production equipment. This producer is confident that the test equipment now falls under 9X515 items, but isn't sure exactly where. How can we help him? Not unlike our previous example, we know that Category 9 in the EAR covers aerospace and propulsion. We saw that. Same scenario here. However, in this case, we're dealing with test equipment. We already set this conversation up, which falls under test, inspection, and production equipment. Because we already know we're interested in 9X515 items, we can look up 9B515 on the CCL. Analysis of 9B515 on the CCL shows that this ECCN covers test equipment that is used on items found on USML Category 15A. Therefore, this company's test equipment falls under 9B515.A and is subject to the controls found therein. Let's have a look at some excerpts that solidify our claims. Okay, continuing our industry vertical, the 9B515.A excerpt from the CCL. But before we look at the CCL, lower right-hand corner, because as we now well know, or we should know by now, we like to be thorough. So we want to point out Category 15, just the first couple of sentences where this all began, the USML. Category 15, Spacecraft Systems and Associated Equipment. The A notation, spacecraft, including communication satellites, remote sensing satellites, scientific satellites, research satellites, navigation, experimental, and multi-mission satellites. So just want to bring back the reference to ITAR before we move over to the CCL, which is what we're going to do right now. So 9B515, we can see it's test, inspection, and production equipment specially designed for spacecraft and related commodities as follows. Some reasons for control: national security, regional stability, anti-terrorism. Below that, specifics on the controls. National security applies to the entire entry. RS applies to entire entry, and so on. Let's get more granular on the A citation. Test, inspection, and production equipment specially designed for the production or development of commodities enumerated in ECCN 9A515.A or USML Category 15A. So there we have it, moving from ITAR, the USML, to the CCL, in this case, to 9B515.A. Before we finish up in this section, there's a couple of important points we need to make. First one, it's critical to note that exports of 600 series and 9X515 items have additional requirements. You should recognize what they are. We've talked about them. Pursuant to EAR Part 758.6A and B, 600 series and 9X515 exports require, for a sub-bullet point, a destination control statement. We talked about that in some detail, to be placed on both the invoice and transport document. Second sub-bullet point, and this ties things off rather nicely, the ECCN for each 600 series and or 9X515 items must be printed on the invoice, transport document, and other export control documents. You'll remember we also defined what an export control document is. So not only do we need a destination control statement, but we have to make reference to the ECCN for both 600 series and 9X515 items on the invoice, transport doc, or any other export control document that goes along with a shipment. So the tactical execution, the paperwork that's being prepared for an export related to 600 series and 9X515 items, important to tie that off. With that, we're going to wrap up this section, and as you'll see, we'll be moving on to anti-boycott provisions under the EAR. Come back soon.